My name is RWood and this is RWood Outdoors.
A small craft advisory remains in effect until noon Central Standard Time Friday. Winds and waves.
The arch enemy of any kayaker is the wind. That wind is howling today, blowing upwards of 20 miles an hour, and it is a miserable day to be out on a kayak. If only there were some way to harness that wind. And we're off. If you haven't given kayak sailing a try, you're really missing out. No more excuses to stay on dry land on those windy days. This is a great way to cover a lot of water and have a lot of fun when the winds are blowing. So I've decided to film the instructional part of this video here on dry land. The reason being, when I'm out on the water and that wind is blowing, it's very difficult to hear what I have to say through the microphone. So let's get started. The most important thing I look for in a sailing kayak is stability. If you're used to seeing sailboats out on the water, you'll notice that they're often heeled over at an angle due to the force of the wind on the sail. Having a good stable kayak is the perfect way to fight that condition and make sure you don't flip over. When judging the stability of a kayak, I always ask myself, is it comfortable for me to stand up while inside my kayak? Some kayaks are very narrow and sleek, and they're very tippy, and that's probably not a good thing when setting sail. Next, if your kayak is equipped with some sort of pedal drive, this is definitely an advantage when going out for a sail. The reason being is twofold. Number one, it's very nice to have an additional source of propulsion besides your paddle. And number two, these fins act as a keel or a dagger board below the water, which is very useful for sailing upwind. If you don't have the Hobie style pedal drive and have the propeller version that you can see on a Wilderness Systems or a Native Kayak or some other companies out there, that's okay too. The idea is to have something below the waterline to act as a keel. If you don't have a pedal style kayak, that's not a big deal. Just recognize that some of your upwind sailing performance is going to be less than if you had something sticking below the water. Another nice feature to look for in a sailing kayak is a built-in rudder. A rudder, of course, is your steering mechanism to change directions as you're tacking in the wind. If you don't have a rudder, not a big deal. You can accomplish the same thing by using your paddle as a tiller arm. Last but not least, you need somewhere to mount your sailing mast. If you're the proud owner of a Hobie kayak, most likely your kayak already comes with a mast receptacle. If you don't have a Hobie kayak, it's not too difficult to make something that can receive the mast. I accomplished the same thing with a bulkhead fitting and some Schedule 80 PVC pipe. Just recognize there's a lot of forces on that structure and make sure it's well reinforced. So it's time to put our sail together. Very simple, we'll just grab our mast and our sail. And this mast comes in two pieces, connected by a bungee cord, makes it nice and easy. And then we'll thread the mast up through the sail. All right, we're ready to go. Let's put it in the mast receptacle. So with this kind of kayak, and only one sail, that's called your main sail, and the rope coming off the sail is called the main sheet. There's a lot of funny terms in sailing, you just got to get used to it. Anyway, we'll take the main sheet and thread it through the pad eye in the back of the kayak. If your kayak doesn't have one of these, go through the rear handle. It does the same thing. A really nice accessory to have when you're kayak sailing is a clam cleat. Some companies call it a V cleat, but basically they're all the same, and they work by these little teeth that grab onto the rope. When you want to let out line, lift up and line will slip through, and then when you want to tighten things up, just pull straight and those teeth will grab hold. This makes everything a whole lot easier on your hands, so you don't have to hold the force of the line taut by the wind for an extended period of time. So here's a few tips when you're getting ready to start sailing. It's usually best to start with the sail in the furled position. That means you obviously don't have any impact from the wind trying to blow you around. Next, you want to point the bow of the boat directly into the wind. So my giant red arrow here, let's pretend that that is the wind direction. So once you're comfortably pointed into the wind, it's time to unfurl the sail, and do that simply by pulling on the main sheet. When you're headed directly into the wind, that position is called in irons, and basically that means you have a flag instead of a sail, and that sail will luff in the wind. Okay, it's now time to set sail. So the best advice I can give you at this point is don't think of your sail so much as a parachute, but think of it as an airplane wing. If you've ever held your hand out of a car window, you can see that angling your hand at a certain direction generates lift. A sail works basically the same way. So when you're ready to start sailing, take your rudder and point your bow at an angle that's not directly into the wind. The wind should be coming in at a sharp angle right now, and this is called a close haul. And for best sailing performance, it's best to pull as tightly as possible on the main sheet. And again, think of that sail as an airplane wing, and that'll generate lift even though you're technically sailing upwind. And although you cannot go directly into the wind, you can zigzag upwind, and that is called a tack. So I'm on a port tack right now, and then if I need to change directions to go directly into the wind, I'm going to turn my rudder and change directions and go into a starboard tack. Like this. Okay, and now we've switched sides into a starboard tack. And we're moving again. Sailing upwind but at a shallower angle is called a close reach, and you want to let out a little more sail than in the close haul position. The fastest that you're ever going to be able to sail is when the wind is perpendicular to the boat, and that is called a beam reach. The best way I can describe that is imagine holding an ice cube between your index finger and your thumb. So let's pretend the index finger is my sail and my thumb is the keel below the boat. When those two forces act together, it shoots you out, and that's how you can get going really fast, even faster than the wind is blowing. The best way to tell if your sail is trimmed properly is to watch those streamers on either side of the sail, known as telltales. When your sail is trimmed correctly, both sides should be flying straight back. So keep turning the kayak so that you're now downwind and you're past the point where the wind is perpendicular to you in the beam reach, and this is called the broad reach. At this point where the wind is starting to be at your back, now's the time to start thinking of your sail more like a parachute. Let out a bunch of the main sheet and the wind will carry you that direction. When the wind is directly at your back, this is now called running with the wind. Again, let out more of the main sheet, and at this point your sail will be as much like a parachute and as least like an airplane wing. And this will blow you the direction downwind. Now at this stage you do have to be careful because the sail can switch directions very quickly, and this is called a jibe if you do it on purpose, or it'll knock you in the head with the rope or the boom if not. Now obviously the ideal sailing conditions will depend on the type of kayak rig you have and the body of water you're sailing in. But from personal experience, I've found that 10-mile-an-hour winds is fairly ideal for kayak sailing. Anything less than that and you won't be going very fast, which isn't all that exciting. And anything more than that gets a bit sporty. But I have had this rig out in 20-plus-mile-an-hour winds, and as long as you pay close attention to what you're doing, it can be a lot of fun. So I probably should have titled this video, How Not to Sail a Kayak. Anyway, good thing is you just flip it over and keep going. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode of RWood Outdoors, be sure to hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom of your screen. My name is Ryan Wood, and we'll see you next time.